This is One on One. We are proud to be joined by Mark Naison, who is a professor of African American Studies and History at Fordham University. You have not been teaching there for 42 years.
Oh, yes, I did. I have. I started there when I was 24 years old in 1970.
And you're currently teaching a course called From Rock and Roll to Hip Hop, Urban Youth Cultures in Post-War America. Fascinating stuff. And as I looked at this course and what you have in it, it's so much about how music plays a role in our lives and how music is a window into our history.
Oh, it absolutely is. Even when I was teaching in the early 70s, I always played music in my classes because I felt it was a way of capturing particular historical eras. I grew up in Brooklyn in the 50s, and we were part of a whole generation of people who started singing doo-wop on the street corners and in the hallways, and that music shaped our lives.
Right.
But we would not have been able to do that if we were growing up in the Depression, because we all would have had to work to help support the families. Rock and roll was a product of a period of unusual prosperity in American society, where young people, even in working class neighborhoods, had disposable income. Anybody could get a part-time job, and with that, you could get a transistor radio, you could get one of those little, record players with the 45s, and we didn't realize it at the time that we were fortunate in that way, and we had a music that we could call our own, which our parents, didn't understand.
And the hip-hop piece?
The hip-hop piece arises in a totally different environment. This is when New York City is undergoing deindustrializations, factories are closing, middle-class people are moving out, neighborhoods are experiencing arson and abandonment, there are drug epidemics, and worse than that, the music programs in the schools that we had in the 50s are being taken out by the fiscal crisis. And young people who were in these neighborhoods which are falling apart without access to music instruction created a music out of nothing.
You're listening to the music of New York City behind us.
Yeah.
Right, the sirens right now, it's part of the city.
No, broken glass everywhere. That was their world, but they took the music around them, which is what they heard in the radio, and they took the dance moves that they were seeing from James Brown or Bruce Lee movies, and they created an art form which was totally different in sound, but was appropriate to their world. See, we loved harmony because we were living better than our parents did. I grew up in a Jewish-Italian neighborhood in Brooklyn where all the parents had lived through the Depression. And the memories of that weighed on them. But us, we now were living in a period of prosperity, and we had these limitless hopes of achieving the American dream.
And the music reflects that?
Absolutely.
And the music now reflects what?
Now, today, the music today reflects confused commercialism gone sour. See, the hip-hop of the 70s and 80s reflected a world that was falling apart, but where young people were going to create their place in it. They made it. They developed. Today, people inherit music that was created in different circumstances, which is filled with the expectation of prosperity. There's bling and, there's talk about cars and wealth, except that now there's an economic crisis which is making that harder and harder to achieve. So the result is the music doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have a center. The great hip-hop that I remember is either stuff like Grandmaster Flash's The Message, broken glass everywhere, don't push me 'cause I'm close to the edge. It described what things were like in the 70s and 80s after the fires and hit the neighborhoods of the Bronx. Then in the 90s, you have these great songs like Wu-Tang Clan's Cream, Cash Rules about the drug dealing in the crack era, or Biggie Small's song, Things Done Changed, about how the world that I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, where there were cookouts and parents took care of kids, is replaced by this violent world that, our parents used to take care of us, now they're scared of us. Another line is, you're either slinging crack rock or have a wicked jump shot. These were hard times, but the music was a great narrative story about it. Then we went through a period where the crack epidemic ended, a prosperity started to come, and then you have the music that glorifies materialism.
But you also say, Mark, and I bet there are a lot of parents watching this who have a hard time relating to what you're talking about right now because they don't know the music you're talking about.
Yeah.
You also argue that parents and their kids should be listening to this music together.
I think they should listen to the music that came out of the earlier periods of hip hop to see that this music has the potential to tell great stories. Today's hip hop, I have problems with.
Because?
Because there's no.
First of all, the language.
Well,
is the language different in today's hip hop? You have said that the N word was not used in the earlier days of hip hop the way it is now, or the B word, right, to refer to women.
Is
that true?
That's absolutely true. In the early '80s, you have let's take the two great songs that set hip hop on the map is Rapper's Delight and The Message by Grandmaster Flash. You will not find an N word or a B word in either of those songs. That first starts to come in the late '80s when the crack epidemic hit the cities and set in motion a whole set of catastrophes, which led to a lot of tension between men and women, particularly since the crack epidemic was the first drug epidemic which hit women as hard as men. And that set in motion a lot of the violence and negativity that you see in the language. But even some of the artists who use those words were great storytellers. I mean, now, Nas, there's...
a few seconds, go ahead.
Okay, Nas, in his album Illmatic, gives a portrait of what life was like in the housing projects of Queens that is better than any article you would ever read in the newspaper. Or there's a song by Naughty by Nature called Ghetto Bastard, which talks about how the elites of the society have left him to bring himself up, and that they're all alone. Some of these songs are harsh, and the language is harsh, but they tell an important story. What I don't see, I can't think of a single song today which tells a story as powerful as the ones of the '90s.
Mark Naison, professor of African American Studies and History, Fordham University for 42 years. You have not lost an ounce of passion for your work and for your students, for your teaching. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Same here. Stay right there.
Okay.
Folks, One-on-One will continue from the Tisch WNET studios here at Lincoln Center right after this.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Caldwell College, New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Group, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, and banking under the principle of stewardship. QualCare Inc., a local managed care company covering 750,000 New Jersey residents. And by Verizon Communications. Promotional support provided by The Record, North Jersey's trusted source, and NorthJersey.com. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been produced in partnership with St. Joseph's Healthcare System.